So I was going to say, so you can also lose your hearing through an illness, yeah?
Yeah. It's very common amongst children. Children suffer from a condition known as glue ear that can cause fluid to accumulate in the ear and cause a loss of hearing, which has to be then treated surgically. So the eardrum is deliberately perforated, a small grommet inserted, drained out, and then the ear is left to heal.
If you've got a perforated eardrum, can you actually sort of like reverse cover the perforation? Can you actually reverse the effect?
It is possible to do it.
It is possible?
Yeah, and it's something that ENT surgeons do very often, is repair damaged eardrums.
What about, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say about hearing loss in general, there is no surgery per se, is there?
It depends on the type of hearing loss. There are two main types of hearing loss. One is a conductive hearing loss. That's sort of a problem with a mechanical means of transmitting sound down the ear. And there is what's called a sensory neural hearing loss. Sensory neural hearing loss is the one that affects most people, and for this generally there is no surgical or medical treatment. There are one or two conditions that can be dealt with by medication or by surgical intervention, but generally speaking, if it's noise-induced hearing loss or age-related hearing loss, which by far make up the largest proportion of causes, then that cannot be dealt with by medical or surgical means.
So really, so our ear really has been designed to really withstand quite, a noisy environment as we walk through the city.
It was designed for listening to enable us to hunt our prey in open fields, etc. It was never designed to cope with modern industrial noise or urban living, which is why you see many people from industrialized countries, in industrialized cities, suffering from noise-induced hearing loss, and why we see increasing numbers of younger people being affected because of this exposure to very loud noise. So it was not designed to cope with this constant stream of noise.
I suppose, it's obvious that some professions are more susceptible to hearing loss, like, people on construction sites, for instance. I often see workers sort of drilling things without an earplug. What are some of the other professions that perhaps people working at airports, I would imagine?
The airports are not so bad. I see the airport, and people at the airports do wear ear protection. There are many jobs where people are exposed to loud noise, whether it's in manufacturing industries. So, for example, when I was in the UK, I came from a town in northern England where they used to manufacture cotton. And in times gone by, people that worked in the cotton mills almost always went almost completely deaf because of the noise of the spinning machines.
I see. Constant spinning of the machine.
And it was very noisy. So in those days, they weren't aware of the level of damage that was caused, so no ear protection was worn. But now, in most places, in factories, airports, etc., there are regulations to ensure that the employees are protected from loud noise. But unfortunately, on construction sites or where somebody's digging a road, enforcement is not at its strongest, shall we say. And I often see it myself. People exposed to this level of noise will definitely suffer some form of hearing loss later in their life.
We'll come back to that in just a bit, but we've got to take a quick break right now. But we'll be back in just a few minutes to continue our discussion with Kieran McCarry on hearing loss and what you can do about it. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Breakfast Show, and it's gone 8:12 on a Wednesday morning, the 25th of March, and nice weather in the morning all around, but then the rain in the afternoon, except if you're in Penang, sunny all day long in Penang. Now, we're talking about hearing loss and what you can do if, you're finding that you're hard of hearing a bit, and joining us on the Breakfast Show this morning is Kieran McCarry, the Managing Director of Clarisound Professional Hearing Care. Now, before we go on to ask you, more questions on hearing loss, we've got a caller, I understand. Mr. Lim. Good morning, Mr. Lim.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to ask about this ringing sound in my ears.
Tinnitus. We're just talking about tinnitus. I think you have a constant ringing sound in your ear?
Yeah, ringing sound in my ear. And I would like to know what happened and what I have to take for supplement.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Lim. I'm sorry that you are hearing this hearing sound. So, Mr. Lim obviously might be suffering from tinnitus?
It certainly sounds like it. I think the advice I would give to you, Mr. Lim, is go and see an ENT surgeon. Until such time as the cause of the tinnitus is established, it's very difficult to be able to give advice like this. So you need to see a doctor and you need to have the cause investigated.
What can be done though?
No,
if you...
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, but how long? I suppose if it keeps ringing all the time, but sometimes when you've just heard a very loud sound, you've been to a rock concert, for instance, your ears keep ringing for the next, half an hour, next few hours, but then that's okay because it dies down after a while.
It will die down afterwards, but it's also an indication that your ears have been damaged.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what you have is a temporary threshold shift in your hearing. You can't hear very well, and you have this ringing noise. And it's definitely your ears have been exposed to too much noise then. But with this noise exposure, the damage is very small and cumulative. So if you continue to do it, in later life, it will come back to haunt you, so to speak.
Mr. Lim asked about, he asked supplements, he said, whether he can take. But then can you cure, you cannot cure tinnitus, can you?
It can be dealt with. There are various means to deal with it, but I would say to people, if they're concerned about the causes of tinnitus, the first course of action they should take is go and see a doctor and have themselves examined to make sure there are no specific causes for it.
Well, Mr. Lim, I think that that's good advice coming from Kieran McCarry there. So go see your ENT specialist because you don't want to have that ringing sound constantly because it's driven people mad. Famous people have got King George. They thought that he was mad, but he had tinnitus, I understand. And William Shatner as well.
William Shatner also suffers from tinnitus and wears hearing aids.
Wears hearing aids.
Yeah. There are many famous people. Bill Clinton is probably the most famous current
I never
person.
knew Bill Clinton wore hearing aids, but Joe, you seem to know this.
No, this is a joke we little shared on air, so we probably shouldn't do that.
Now, so you mentioned hearing aids. So of course you produce sort of high-end hearing aid.
Not just high-end ones. We have hearing aids that cover the whole range and spectrum of hearing loss and also budgets, etc. One of the reasons why people don't do anything about their hearing is, of course, there is a perceived stigma attached to the wearing of a hearing aid. So, of course, when somebody wears a hearing aid, they can feel that maybe that other people consider them old or a little bit senile in some cases. So there is people generally have a great fear of wearing hearing aids.
Well, it used to be really unsightly, you could see the unit.
Indeed.
You can tell
you
that
have
people
really tiny ones.
Deaf.
Could you perhaps show us?
Well, times have changed. The big, ugly hearing aids are still around, but not used very often. So we have an instrument here, which is called a completely in the canal hearing aid.
If you point it to camera one.
This is a
there you are.
So this is a custom-built hearing aid, which just sits inside the ear.
Is that a hearing aid in there? I didn't even see it.
Yeah. So it's a very tiny thing that can be made to be cosmetically highly acceptable and yet still have great performance.
There you are. It's it's really tiny. It's and I suppose you can make it to make it look sort of transparent as well.
It can be done like that.
Because
but
that
this
one
is
goes
sitting
into
inside
your ear, whereas the outer colour is
Right.
a skin colour.
All right, okay. So Joe and I have molded earpieces, and you've got two other contraption there.
And again, the big bulky instruments that used to go behind the ear have gone and been replaced by these with very slim fittings.
I think we need to show it.
So when this is worn, it just looks like a grey hair. So it's not, you don't have these big bulky plastic tubes anymore.
You can see it now on the screen.
Wonderful. And of course, the size is also reducing. This is another one.
It's more like you can hardly see it now on your screen.
This is smaller again. So when this is worn, this really just disappears into the hairline. And again, this just looks like a hair coming down.